Welcome back to The Pillars. On today's episode, we're going to discuss jealousy, and not just what can cause jealousy or where it comes from, but how you can appropriately deal with it in a way that ultimately strengthens your relationship. And we're going to hear from Jo on some of the fun ways that technology has played a role in her own jealous experience.
Yes.
So enjoy.
Welcome to The Pillars, the podcast of the 363rd ISR Wing of the United States Air Force. I'm Chaplain Jim.
I'm Sergeant Jo.
And I'm Dr. J.
And today we're going to look at a topic that many of us experience on a weekly basis, maybe a little less often for some, maybe daily for a few. So what's our topic today?
Today we're talking about jealousy. And this came up kind of organically in a discussion that we were having as a team, but I know, at least for me, as a psychologist who works with people through all different stages of their life, that jealousy can rear its ugly head through many different points in a relationship, whether you've been together for just a few weeks or months or even many years down the road.
It gets really difficult in relationships, especially when you feel like, your needs aren't being met, or maybe you're seeing or interpreting things. And so jealousy is so quick to come up. And sometimes there's underlying emotions that then spur that jealousy.
Well, and you could be jealous not just of another person, like a possible competing romantic partner, but of maybe a new child, like taking attention, or a new dog, or maybe a electronic device of some sort.
Wow.
Yeah,
yes.
That's a good point. I mean, it has to do a lot of times with certain needs that aren't being met. And I think there's this bias towards imagining jealousy as something that's more physical in nature, especially in romantic couples. We think about one partner being unfaithful to the other, and or the potential of one partner being unfaithful, and that's something that would appropriately spur jealousy. But actually, what's interesting is the research shows that men and women tend to, at least heterosexual men and women, tend to construe jealousy and even infidelity in somewhat different ways. So men, for example, tend to become more jealous when they believe that their spouse is being physically or sexually unfaithful to them. Because for men, if you guys have read a book called His Needs, Her Needs, it talks about how men like to receive love differently and a lot of times through that physical expression of love. And so when they're not getting that from their partner and the partner is in fact giving that to somebody else, that to them is the biggest betrayal because it speaks to both their physical and their emotional needs. Whereas with women, they still care about the physical intimacy component, but the emotional fidelity is a lot of times more important. And so they will see other women interacting with their man as potentially a threat to that emotional intimacy and that kind of connection. And so I've seen this in my practice from time to time when I'm working with couples, where a woman will say, "Well, yeah, I slept with him, but it didn't mean anything." Well, to the man in the relationship, that did mean a lot. That was the ultimate type of betrayal, and that's where a lot of his jealousy came from. Whereas with the guy, he'd say, "Well, yeah, we're just really good friends," or maybe the wife was expressing concern about his coworkers who are female, who was spending a lot of time with and interacting with, and developing these close social and emotional bonds. That in her mind was more egregious than the physical act of cheating. And so I think what you guys are talking about when jealousy rears its ugly head, it's more about not getting certain needs met in the relationship. And that can cause us to act in jealous ways in order to try to reobtain the needs that we're trying or perceived to have lost from our partners.
Yeah, I know for me, the only jealousy I experience is with the artificial intelligence that we allow in our home, where she plugs into the wall and you can basically ask her anything you want and she gives you an answer. The only problem is I've experienced that she doesn't respond to me like she responds to my husband. And so there are several times where I'll say, "Hey, please set a timer for 15 minutes or something like that." And she just goes on this whole, "I'm sorry, I don't understand you." And then my spouse will go in and he'll say, "Set a timer, 15 minutes. And she's like, "Oh, sure, I'll set a timer for you." And it's like, why does he get the response?
Does she use that breathy voice too?
I swear she does. I swear she does. It's this crazy situation. And even he laughs about it because he gets the response from her, where me, I'm yelling her name to get her to acknowledge me, and
so this machine is, you feel like she's purposefully ignoring you?
Yeah,
maybe trying to like cause a rift between you and your husband?
I 100% believe that she is infiltrating my role as the mother and wife in my home, because my children will even go, what's the weather outside? And they won't even ask me anymore. Like, I usually tell my daughter, like, grab a coat today or don't grab a coat today. They go straight to her.
That used to be your role.
That was my role. And then now I'm like, well, you could have asked me. Like,
and you can see jealousy isn't just purely in that sexual infidelity piece. It can be just taking time or taking attention away from us. And logically, we know like there's more to it. It's a great story, though. That's why I was trying to cue it up earlier, too. But the thing is, things can take our attention, and really it shows, in my opinion, in all of us, a lack of contentment, because all of us have jealousy for something, someone's time or attention. And if we can reflect on it and say, what's the opposite of jealousy? Well, on the spiritual piece, we might say being content with what you have and what's being brought into your life. So you can do that by just appreciating the person and the thing that's there, even if it's this device. That's you can appreciate a couple things about it, maybe not everything, but we can appreciate our partner. We can express gratitude and to just appreciate the fact that they are still with us and helping us in whatever way they can.
Absolutely. And what we know about jealousy from neurological imaging studies shows that it's more the fear of that loss that spurs jealousy in the first place. There's an area of the brain called the cingulate cortex that lights up real big in certain kinds of monkeys when they see their mate interacting with another monkey, one that's trying to come in on or invade their territory. And that area of the brain is related to not just how we process pain, but particularly social pain. We actually feel physical and emotional pain the same as we would like a medical or illness or a physical injury when we see this happening. And so that spurs us to do anything or whatever we can within our power to try to stop that pain from happening. And a lot of times that means taking action and acting with jealous behaviors, which are designed to try to reinstill closeness with your significant other, but a lot of times are counterproductive. You guys have any examples of that, or anything you've seen where somebody started acting jealously and pushed the other person away instead of bringing them closer?
I know for you probably see it in your couples counseling. I know the couples that I coach and stuff, that's pretty significant. The male will definitely be like, why does she act this way? And she's like, why don't you love me? And you can just tell that there's just this miscommunication going on, and in some way it's been interpreted that there's some jealousy component, whether he works too much or maybe he doesn't give her the time. And it could be the opposite. Maybe she works too much and she doesn't give him the time, and then he's experiencing the jealousy for whatever that is. And it may not be some other person. It could just be whatever the attention is headed to.
Else competing for attention.
Definitely.
Right.
The irony are a lot of couples, though, people will express, well, he's not jealous or she's not jealous enough for me, thinking it's a positive trait.
Okay.
Why do you think that would be?
Well, because we all want to be desired. We all want somebody to demonstrate that they're making effort to win our affection and to win our attention. And if somebody's not expressing that, then we may not feel loved. We may not feel like that person is continuing to pursue us. And so to some extent, I think you're right, it could be healthy. Where it becomes unhealthy is when one or even both partners, such as in the case of codependence, will try to smother each other and spend all or if not all, most of their time with the other person, and try to draw out the affection that they're not getting or the reassurance that they feel like they need. And so that's where it can start to push the other person away, because now instead of feeling like they want to get close to this person, all they want to do is get away and get some independence and autonomy, just to get some breathing room and to have some modicum of privacy. And so I think there needs to be that balance between how we pursue the people who we date or who we're married to, as well as recognition of when we're going too far, doing too much, and perhaps bordering into that jealous territory.
So with jealousy, when you start experiencing that, what are some healthy avenues? Because ultimately you're going to feel it. You can't just push the jealousy away. So what are some healthy options for jealousy?
I'll tell you what's not a healthy avenue is to try to take retribution or get revenge on your significant other, which unfortunately I see quite a lot. It's the idea that you hurt me in this way, whether they're aware of it or not, so I'm going to do the same thing to you so you can feel the pain that I'm feeling. it's not the most healthy way to think of things, but a lot of times we have these revenge fantasies, or we want to help people understand the impact they had on us, and the only way we can think to do that is to treat them almost the exact same way. Now, that rarely ever works out in a positive manner. So a better approach is to, believe it or not, just talk about it. Have these open conversations, and it can be as simple as using the I feel statements. Hey, I want to let you know I've been feeling kind of jealous lately, and I'm not sure why. Or it's because I, see you spending so much time at work, and I feel like we haven't had as much time as we used to just spend together and getting to know each other. That kind of direct, not beating around the bush conversation can save relationships. But it's uncomfortable, and a lot of us avoid it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think that's so important to talk about it. I've seen many couples where a person takes some form of revenge against the partner, and some of it, and we're not always talking like slash your tires and break the windows. Extreme. It can be an example. Well, I stopped texting you every day, and the other partner responds with, "Oh, you did? I know." I was like, "Thank goodness! Now I get all this time back." And the other partner's like, "Well, that was revenge. Like, I thought it was great." Yeah. And so sometimes what you even mean to be inflicting that kind of feeling on your partner isn't generating that response at all. So having these conversations, even though they're difficult, having those crucial conversations, if you want a reference to look up, are really important.
And there's a physiological reason why we do that too. So I mentioned the cingulate cortex. There's also hormonal involvement. So when we feel jealousy, it's a violation of this certain area of our brain, the lateral septum, that involves pair bonding, and a hormone called oxytocin that, at least in certain mammals, has been associated with how we connect with people one-on-one, how we pair bond with our significant other. And when we feel like there's a violation or there's a threat to that, the hormones cortisol, which you may know as a stress hormone, indicated in our fight or flight response, and testosterone for both men and women is released in huge spurts into our bloodstream. Why testosterone is significant is in mating threat situations, it tends to lead to aggression. So you are now hyped up, you're agitated, anxious, stressed, and also this testosterone is making you feel like you've got to take some aggressive action to protect your relationship. And so it can often come out in less than helpful ways, not just taking revenge, but sort of passive aggressive mechanisms like not texting, or I'm just going to stop talking to this person, or I'm not going to fulfill my responsibilities around the house, things of that nature. Just make certain comments which the other person may not even pick up on in the first place and aren't going to do you any good, into trying to win that person back. So I think it's important to be aware of that, how these things are influencing you, so that you can take the appropriate steps to de-stress yourself, to make sure that you're in a calm and level place to even have that conversation in the first place in order to make it beneficial.
I know definitely when I do coaching and stuff, I always talk about hurt people. And it's not always intentional. It's a reactive protective measure as well, right? Like that stung really bad, what you did. And now I'm going to make sure that either you feel stung, or I'm going to push you to that way so I don't feel like I'm getting hurt.
Protect myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But being on the opposite end, right? Like someone is experiencing jealousy and it's coming at you, right? Like maybe your spouse is experiencing jealousy. What are some tips or ideas, situations to kind of de-escalate that, or to kind of reassure your significant other, spouse, anybody, even child?
Yeah, I mean that's a difficult situation to be in, because unless that person has explicitly said to you that that's what they're experiencing, you may not even know.
True.
So some of these lower level, like we talked about, passive aggressive signs might be present, but it's hard to connect why it is that they're acting that way. So I encourage people to just generally check in with their spouse, even if they feel like things are going well, because you never know what's going on beneath the surface, and it's a relatively innocuous question. How are you doing today? How are we doing? I regularly have this conversation with my wife, just because I want to know, hey, how are we doing lately? And sometimes the answer has surprised me in both a positive and negative direction. But without that information, I wouldn't know that there is something that I need to do differently, or that I was doing something that was bothering her, either intentionally or, more often than not, unintentionally. So I think it's important to have that kind of open communication. And I said it before, that can literally save relationships.
And I think what's important of what you just said, and all of us would agree at some level, like you're a psychologist, you're a mental health tech, I'm a chaplain, and we miss these things. Like we can't mind read, so you can't mind read, and your spouse or significant other can't either. So it's important to have these conversations, ask how you're doing these check-ins, and this, I appreciate you sharing it, because I think a lot of folks think, well, I'm married or in this relationship, so I should know, and that's just not true. Like we can't read each other's minds.
No.
And I'll be the first to say, and if you read my 5 Minutes to Thrive, a few weeks ago, you probably saw one on HALT, the Hungry, Angry, Lonely, Tired, where I talked about, even I, somebody who like should be on it, I make mistakes, and I have arguments in my own relationship, and that's okay. Like we're all human, and we're all subject to the same faults and mistakes. As long as we're willing to be self-aware and to try to learn from them, that's okay. And I think that applies to jealousy as well.
I think so. I see jealousy a lot in my children. I have an 8, almost 9-year-old going on a teenager in her head. Then I have a 4-year-old who's just a 4-year-old. And the 8 or 9-year-old will actually misbehave more than the 4-year-old because in her mind, in order to get that attention, because she gets jealous of her brother a lot.
Yeah, because he's younger, he gets more attention from mom and dad, whereas, he supplanted her originally because she was an only child. And so, now she's having to compete with him for mom and dad's attention, and I would guess, because she's relatively autonomous, that more often than not, she loses on that. And
unfortunately,
that's a difficult thing for a kid to try to come to terms with. I see this on the marital side, on the parental side as well, especially when that first and second kid comes. One or both parent will focus so much more on the kids, they stop paying attention to each other, and so the kids become an object of jealousy from the adults in the family, and they're saying, "You're taking my spouse away from me." Because before you came around, it was just us, and things were great. We could do whatever we wanted, and we could be spontaneous. And now you guys have sucked the life out of our social life, or whatever it was that we were doing before. And so that's something that I think it's important to attend to as well. It doesn't make you a bad person to have these feelings, but if you try to hide them or just push them away, they go unaddressed and can become a problem later on.
This is why I verbalized my dislike for this artificial intelligence in my home.
I love it.
Consistently. I will unplug her consistently. We're done.
And that's another way.
Well, so to wrap everything up today, so we went over jealousy, we went through some ways to deal with it, that contentment, appreciation, having open and honest conversations, that we can be jealous of not just a partner, but of inanimate objects or of children or dogs. I'm just teasing.
Anything that steals attention,
anything takes
or
attention
affection
away, right?
Yeah.
Anything at all. It can be an object, a toy, or like if you have a boat or a plane, whatever your hobbies have. I have no boat or plane, but just saying that out loud. Okay. Anyway, did we miss anything else we should cover in
the
a wrap
big
up?
takeaway is if you're experiencing jealousy, or somebody with whom you're in a relationship is experiencing jealousy, to have that conversation about it. Try to identify it and actually label it, so that you guys can have a conversation about it, and then figure out collaboratively what you can do to keep it from becoming an issue.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you for listening to The Pillars, the podcast of the 363rd ISR Wing, and we just thank you for what you do for our nation, and we look forward to seeing you next time.